Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm privileged to welcome a very, very accomplished doctor from Washington, D.C., USA, Dr. Kanchan Anand. Kanchan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Ashutosh. It's a real privilege to be here.
Kanchan is a doctor specializing in medicine and nephrology, and she works in the Washington metro area for over 2 decades. She's the chair of the Bioethics Committee. She's been a Patient's Choice Award winner and also she's also been seen as the most compassionate doctor award, top doctor award. She started as an entrepreneur in solo practice and now works with the largest health system in the area. Kanchan, you've had an amazing, journey. So let's start with first asking you, you started working on managing stress. Tell me about the motivation and your journey on this.
It's a very interesting and a very powerful journey, I would say, because when I moved from India about 28 years ago, we were used to, as you know, calm, and there is a lot of family support. You're always like in a happy mode most of the time. And then when I moved here to the Northern American continent, I realized that people were running a rat race. They were constantly stressed. They were just running and they did not know where they were going. And, that made me think early on during my residency and during my fellowship when I was initially in Pennsylvania and in Washington, D.C. area subsequently, I found that they needed some kind of just a little idea and education, maybe some awareness about their inner self also. So, when I would do my rounds as I was the attending at the hospital, which is part of the biggest system here, I found that the physicians and the nurses were very stressed. And, they would just talk with me casually. So one-on-one, I would just kind of say, breathe and don't worry about things, live in the present moment. And, I would teach them some pranayam, some breathing techniques and some meditation techniques. And then as time went on, coming to fast forward now to COVID, it was totally like a volcano ready to erupt. Now, one day, actually, I was rounding at the hospital, and 2 of the nurses had stopped me and asked me point blank, what can we do to feel calm and relaxed, Dr. Anand? We've been so stressed. That made me think, because, sitting down for 10 minutes and breathing and all of those were not practical for them. During COVID, as you know, we were all, in the PPEs, running around, and literally in the afternoons, they would stop and say, they would be stumbling over their steps trying to grab a bite to eat. And that was across the board. And so they didn't have 10 minutes. They barely had, 60 seconds. Even if I told them, sit down for a minute and breathe, they would say, no, we're so stressed. So when they asked me that question, that led me into thinking deeper into what is it that they can use that would be effective and easy to do. So one fine day, I woke up and I said to myself, this is going to be like an amalgamation of whatever I've learned in my life. So I've been doing this for more than 35 some years, the breathing and the meditation. I kind of combined all of what I had learned. I'd learned some healing techniques also. So I put it all together. And it literally takes 60 seconds, and it's called My 60 Seconds because it is your 60 seconds to reclaim your inner well-being.
Very interesting. So tell me about this technique of relaxation, which is your 60 seconds or My 60 seconds.
So the My 60 Seconds technique has 3 principles. The first one is based on deep breathing. As you know, deep breathing actually calms us down. When you see somebody who's agitated, they're normally breathing fast and, very restless. Whereas when you breathe slow and deep, it's really calming. So because the mind and the breath are like mirror images of each other. So if you want to really change your mind, how you're thinking, you would breathe slow and deep. That's one. It actually also releases serotonin and dopamine in the neurotransmitters of the brain. So they've done studies now because over the last decades, it's become a big thing. The second principle is based on connecting with the positivity of the universe. You see, when you're running around, you forget that you're connecting with so much that's draining, especially in the healthcare industry. When the doctors and nurses are making their rounds, talking to the patients, they are very sick people, especially recently.
Correct.
And so they're draining. And without us realizing that we have actually given up all of our, strength and our inner, the resilience to them for the time being, it's very important to stop, breathe, and connect with the positivity. Just as you would connect your cell phone, charge it. It's exactly like that. So we connect with that positivity. And the third principle is one of gratitude. You see, gratitude multiplies what we have received.
Okay.
It is also a very positive, energy. And so instead of having to drop off your negative energy, automatically you've connected with the positivity and that gratitude that has great positive energy. We feel calm and relaxed. It's very simple when you listen to it. It's very easy to do. And we started doing it. So one fine day I go to work and I say to those nurses, I said, come on, let's sit down and we are going to do something very special, something that you really needed and asked for. Sat down and did it. And they were like, what was that? And that's how the journey began. And basically what I did afterwards was I'm not a scientist, I'm not a researcher, but I sat down and I typed out a feedback form, that would say, what was your stress level before and after on scale of 0 to 5? And was it easy to follow? Where do you work? What is your role? And I started doing it with the doctors, nurses, case managers, front desk people, cafeteria staff, our security staff. Everybody was involved in this because wherever I would go, I would say, come on, let's sit down and breathe. And guess what? We found that the stress levels had come down 40 to 60% in those 60 seconds.
Wow. Amazing. So this 60 seconds of breathing and gratitude and that you go through, this can be done multiple times in a day, as often as people want.
Absolutely. I actually recommend to them that at least do it twice during your work time and then before you go to bed. Because remember, when we go to bed and we have this calm breathing going on and that feeling of positivity and gratitude, sleep into it, your whole night converts into that positive mode and you wake up fresh and ready to fight the world and, serve the world.
Amazing. And this technique that you have developed, are people outside or beyond your hospital also now beginning to adopt it?
Yes, they are. They are. So I get calls so often and they'll ask me and say, can you do it now? Because the world has become so small. Everything is on Zoom. So one of the biggest, I'm sure you've heard of Johns Hopkins. So I had a feeler from them. They want me to come and do it with their team members, which is great. It's a privilege for me. Plus, it's such a happy moment for me because it's spreading so people can benefit.
Wonderful.
My whole dream is, and then I also had feelers from schools, the school system wants to do it with their teachers and students because our nurses started doing it with their children, who are school-going kids. And they said, my God, my kids love it. And they asked me, when are we doing it again? I want to do my 60 seconds. So it's spreading to schools. I have friends who are in the police. They want to do it. So it's beyond the firefighters and everybody. And in fact, I'm developing an app now, my 60-second app, which is going to be just, free. This is really to serve, to send it out, this message out, an easy technique that people can use. So
wonderful. How wonderful. And what was the effect of this technique?
What happened was when I looked at all this data, the feedback forms, and it was just amazing. The stress levels dropped 40 to 60%. to see those graphs, and I'll share those graphs with you. Maybe you can share it later on with our viewers. And actually literally see the graphs dropping. So before the stress levels are that high, and then afterwards, you can see those. And
so I'm sorry, I'm not a doctor, but how does one actually measure stress? Is it that, I mean, I'm fascinated to understand that you actually have graphs on that. So I'd love to understand how you measure it.
Now, if you're a real researcher, a scientific researcher, there are many, stress tools that you can actually measure stress by. They ask you questions. Have you been, feeling stressed lately, or because of your situations? How do you cope with it? What do you do, et cetera, et cetera? There are so many questions that are there. And in fact, we are doing now a research at the hospitals, with our patients in the acute rehab, and we would be using those formal tools. What I used was very plain and simple, because people can, when you suppose you're very stressed and suddenly you feel calm, you can say that maybe my stress level was 4 out of 5. So 0 to 5 means 5 being the max, and 0 being completely at ease. So there was a big variation. Some people felt their stress levels were 4 before, and it came down to 2. So that would be like a 50% improvement. Some people had a stress level of maybe 2, and they came down to 0. So it was all relative. That's how I measured. It was a very plain and simple tool, but actually there are tools. I can send you those also. They have many questions, but remember, these are team members did not have the time.
No, I understand.
But I'll share that with you.
Certainly. This was an amazing kind of thing that was being done by doctors all over the world in the last 2 years, and they continue to do it. But or let me ask you for a lot of my young viewers and listeners, what is stress and how does it impact the body?
So our body has the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. And when our sympathetic nervous system gets stimulated, which happens by stress, it raises your heartbeat. It makes you, on your edge. It's like having taken some steroids. You're on your edge and you're stressed. So stress is something that is not the norm. Where you're feeling not at ease, you're feeling like, oh my God, I'm feeling, not at ease. That is stress. That's how I would define stress. When you're not feeling at ease and there's something bothering, something you're not able to get rid of.
Okay.
In that moment.
And if someone is not feeling at ease, what are the next steps? Should one, of course, one is the 60-second technique, and I'm sure people will find this. But should one also then reach out to a doctor, or what next after you feel the stress?
Right. So, of course, there are techniques. First thing is to pause. If there's something that's causing you the stress again and again, for example, whatever it may be, in certain kind of work you do, whatever. So at that point in time, you want to pause, take deep breaths. Again, there are many techniques, meditation, etc. But now if it's interfering with your lifestyle, if you're not able to work properly, you're not able to spend quality time with your family, even with the family, you're feeling like trying to feel withdrawn, and so when you're not functioning at your capacity, that is when you need to get help. And we are so fortunate that now people are talking about it, especially the celebrities, when they come out and talk about their weaknesses, because initially, people think these are heroes who don't have any problems. But when they are vulnerable, it helps our common people, our youngsters, to open up and say, I felt the same thing. I felt depressed. I felt the stress. How do I deal with it? And then there's counseling. There are psychiatrists. There are simple techniques they can learn. They can have, if that doesn't help, then the next step would be medications. And there are some simple medications too. It's not that you get addicted and then you can't get off.
Very interesting, because, I speak to a lot of young people, and I know a lot of young people, and I hear the word stress far more from the young people than I hear people from my vintage. And that's probably because people in my age don't necessarily talk about it, or maybe they've just matured.
I think we grew up with nature. We grew up with people around us. So a lot of social things have changed.
Mm.
People are living kind of secluded in nuclear families, maybe one child or two children don't have support with each other as much. Mothers are working, fathers are working. So, they're kind of left alone. Now, this generation grew up feeling bored when they were growing up. And now as they've grown up, they feel the stress.
Mm. Very
And I
interesting.
want to say to them,
Mhm.
if they're listening to me, I want to say, believe in yourself. You know, remember, nothing is the end of the world.
Mhm.
What's the worst that'll happen? What's the worst? Nothing.
Mm.
So remember that live each moment, live each day to the best of your ability. Let it be. Do your best and leave the rest. Don't take it
Fascinating.
so seriously. Don't take it so seriously. And, there is so much help out there. Seek the help.
Fascinating. So I'm going to move, Kanchan, to a few questions, which are I call questions for you personally. My first question is that you moved 3 decades ago from India to the US, where you did your medical education or post grad or whatever. When you look back, what would you say are three key milestones or pivot points in your life or your career?
It's a very great question, actually. It makes you think. I think the first, and you said career, right? So the
On your
first,
life or your career, either.
so the first step probably was when I realized that when I went to med school, that
Mhm.
was a very pivotal point
Uh-huh.
because it made me more philosophical. It's interesting, you would say you would become more scientific, but actually, I started to think when I was in the dissection hall and the cadaver was there, I would think, what is the difference between this cadaver and me? We are
Mm.
exactly the same. The
Correct.
body is the same. That's why I'm studying it. But there's something missing.
Mm.
What is that? And who am I? What is my purpose? So
Mm.
that was one very profound time, I would say, was a big milestone. The second milestone was when I moved in North America
Mhm.
and saw the difference in culture and just learning the different norms and growing into taking my exams and becoming trained again to be a
Mhm.
physician and doing my residency. Those were very profound times where I
Mm.
learned so much
Mm.
about how to be confident, how to be out there and do your best.
Mm.
And the third, I would say, is now, it's like kind of, I feel in that mode of giving back
Mhm.
to the world.
Mm.
I've achieved a lot. I'm very grateful for what I have, more than what I ever imagined in my lifetime.
Mhm.
And I feel like this is my moment when I'm doing my 60 seconds with people and, sharing with them what they can use. It's like, outside your house, there is a well. People are thirsty inside the house. They don't know that there's a well outside.
Mhm.
Just go get the water. It's like
Mm.
you have your peace within you, but you don't know how to get it. So
Correct.
this is another big milestone.
Fascinating. My next question to you is that what are some of the core values you believe in? I mean, you're a doctor and you're saving lives and you've been at the forefront fighting COVID for so many of us in your area. But what are some of the core values you believe
I think number one value is integrity,
in? Mhm.
transparency, to believe in a principle and stick by it.
Mhm.
Honesty, truth, all of that goes under that integrity.
Right, right.
The second one I would say is, be kind. It's kind to be kind to people, to yourself.
Mm.
If you're kind to yourself, only then you can be kind to other people.
Correct, correct.
And third one I would say is, it's always learn, always
Mhm.
increase your knowledge.
Mhm.
It's, we can get stagnated. We've learned so much, but even if it's unrelated. So
Mhm.
I'm a physician, but I've enjoyed learning music or painting or, so many other things. I try to learn new things, and
Mm.
that really is fun.
Fascinating. I have time for two more questions for you. My next question is that, for a successful physician, successful doctor, launch this amazing relaxation technique, My 60 Seconds. What does success mean to Kanchan?
Success means that I feel fulfilled. I feel at ease. I'm not running after anything. Whatever I've achieved, I'm proud of. And whatever falls into my lap, I'm grateful for. And I'm not looking for anything more. Whatever happens will happen, because I believe that universe has a way to tap into us. It nudges us and makes us do things. So I'm open to that. That is success for me.
Fascinating. And okay, I've got time. I can take one more question. Next question is, who or what inspires you?
I think inner strength inspires me, and it reminds me of a song, Ekla Cholo, Rabindranath Tagore, who's a Nobel laureate. He had written it, and it means that, yes, call out to people if you're going on a journey that is very meaningful, not just for yourself, but for others. And even if people join you or don't join you, it's okay. You keep going. Even if you have to go alone, walk that path, believe in yourself, which also Vivekananda had said. And he had a huge impact on my life when I was very young.
Wonderful.
So I think it's very important to believe in yourself and walk the path. Walk the path. People will follow you. They will accompany you.
Fascinating. And my last question to you, and this is for the many, many young people, I'm sure many young doctors will listen to. As a senior physician, doctor who's achieved a lot in life, someone who started off the relaxation technique, what would your advice be to a young doctor who's starting off on her or his journey?
First of all, congratulations that you have chosen this path. This is the path where you can really serve humanity. You really can, from your heart. One biggest piece of advice is that when you see a patient, think of them as your family member. How would you treat your own family? When you're treating them, treat them with love, kindness, respect. Explain to them what you're doing. They are not just another person. They are also somebody's loved one. So that's one thing, if you can remember, to always treat them like family. And work from your heart. Everything else follows. Name, fame, money, everything will come to you if you work diligently from your heart with a very good intention. And always increase your knowledge, as I said before. But even in medicine, keep on growing, and all the best.
Amazing. Treat every patient as your family. What amazing advice you've given, Kanchan. And on that note, I just want to say thank you so much for speaking to me. Thank you for speaking to me about managing stress, about your 60-second technique. I think that's just so incredible. And I sincerely hope I'm going to see a book coming from Dr. Kanchan Anand on her 60-second technique, which will be tried and experimented with and work all over the world. Thank you for talking to me at such length about your milestones, about your values, and what success means to you. And I think, thank you again for talking to me about all the good advice for young doctors. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you, Ashutosh, for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.